Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Two Existential Dudes podcast.
I'm Andrew,
And I am Luke.
and today we are going to be discussing introspection, one of the many facets of our wonderful lives that we have to develop with time. So, first of all, what will we define as introspection?
I would say it is looking at yourself through a critical lens in order to improve your life and make you just in general a better person for you and those around you.
Yeah, I always like to think of introspection as a way that you can really hone your identity and the way that you can develop what you want to be, hopefully for other people.
Yeah, that's a thing I have written down here. What I wrote down was strive to be your ideal you, the you that you create rather than settling for what you currently are or what you feel like you were born as or things like that.
I would say everyone has room for growth, no
Yeah.
matter the place, and
Yeah.
especially if they start in their lives somewhere that's much more difficult. It allows them to redevelop themselves and grow into a better person, and especially, again, if they're in a harder beginning of life, such as like living in a ghetto or such, it can really, reflecting on your own self and how you can grow in the world can really help you to achieve good things, I think.
And even if you don't come from a particularly difficult walk of life, it's still, I feel, your responsibility to become the best version of you possible, not only so that you lead a fulfilling life, but so that you're able to make that difference, even not necessarily in the greater world, but just in your immediate social groups and your immediate communities, and it can really make a difference.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And you think if everyone did this, think about how much better the world could be.
Yeah, because many times we face the issue of people not understanding themselves, which forces themselves to be fearful of the world and that the world will judge them as only what they see, which the world will do, unless we're all, of course, we know to look at someone's inner character. But that's not the important part of a personality. The important part of yourself is your inner character and the way you develop it. Martin Luther King, the judge by character, not by color of skin, quite literally judge them by their internal state. And it's about, for you, it's about developing yourself in a way that might just challenge the expectations based on their physical character, both in the way that you view people so that they don't get disenfranchised, and so that the way that other people view you is true.
Yeah, so I'd like to go back to what you said about character, because in the past we've talked a lot about what character really means, because a lot of people, that's kind of an abstract idea to some people. So could you just go into that a little?
For me, your character is it's broken down into three parts: your actions, your beliefs. There's a third one. Oh,
Values.
and your values, the way you think and how you respect things. Thank you. So, your values, of course, are the things that you're taught as you're raised up. Typically, this is something raised by a religion or as your family. Those kind of like family values, that kind of stuff. Your beliefs. Well, we'll come back to that one. Your actions then are typically based upon your values, as if you believe this, or if you respect this as your value, you'll do this. And your actions very specifically demonstrate what your values are. Then your beliefs come as a final attachment of that, because your beliefs can be separate from that, as you can believe things that you may not respect, so to speak.
Yeah.
In some cases, I would think. And that's really important, because the primary aspect of your character are your values and your actions, because those are how people will see you and think about you.
Yeah.
Your beliefs shouldn't be as important. They are, but they shouldn't be the main focus.
Yeah, because there's examples everywhere of people who say they believe something, but don't live up to that. And really, really no one lives up fully to their beliefs or what they value or their own ideals. But it's still important to keep those in mind when you're improving yourself, because they can really be a motivating factor and really a vision for you to pursue as you improve in the future.
Yeah, I use a set of, quote, principles that have outlined my values and how I want to respect and treat others. Things like patience before action and complete understanding before decision, basically to check myself and function as a checklist of things that I need to make sure I'm following. It can be restrictive, but I would still say it's fluid enough that you can work within it.
So another thing that you brought up in your leadership speech the other day was the idea that weaknesses and flaws are different things. Because a lot of people, when they're told to improve themselves or look at themselves critically, they tend to gravitate towards their own weaknesses, which would, if I'm not mistaken, would be things like skills that you're not really developed in, things that you struggle to get done, or things like that. And whereas flaws are like, they're deeper and they're things that you really have to work through in a much deeper way. Can you sort of elaborate?
Tying back to your character, weaknesses are inconsistencies within your actions, while flaws are inconsistencies within your values. So, for example, a weakness might be, I'm not very good at soccer. But a flaw might be, I don't respect my teammates.
Okay.
Which they can go hand in hand, but they are importantly different, because many people, when they want to say that they're addressing their flaws and growing as a person, they attack just the weaknesses. And that's a good place to start, and we want to start with your weaknesses and develop those over time. But your flaws are much harder to grow, and those take a carefully considered, premeditated plan of how you can not attack, but gradually nurture and nurse that into success.
Because especially, even in myself, I've discovered over the years that it's a lot easier to work at something to improve on your weaknesses, because in a way you can kind of just brute force your way through those weaknesses. Like, if you just playing soccer will get you better at soccer, to use your example, but you really have to look deeper at yourself to think, why am I not getting along with my teammates? Or this could apply to friends, family, relationships, anything like that. You really have to look at yourself and think, what is it about myself that's preventing me from having these fulfilling relationships?
And that's where introspection as an activity comes in, because if you want to nurture your flaws, you have to understand yourself and why those flaws are the case. Because if you just kind of put an adverb or an adjective or a noun out for a flaw, that's just labeling it, and labeling's helpful, but you really have to know, like, this is how I'm gonna do it. This, like, considering my own self, like, thinking about your thinking, so to speak.
Yeah. So I guess we could kind of branch off into ways that people could really put this into practice, like, starting today, really. Like, if someone wanted to introspect on, would that be the proper term? Introspect? Reflect on themselves in a critical way, what could they do starting on day one to take that first step?
So there's two things you can really do to really get started, at least in my own experience. I did this with you the one time, where you make a chart of your strengths, weaknesses, flaws, and fears, and you have to really define each one of those. Strengths being what you're good at, weaknesses being what you're not good at, or anti-strengths, so to speak. Flaws being things that are struggles within your virtues, and fears being things that are you're not good at and you're afraid of doing in itself. Fears are really, that's a whole separate discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a really good way to identify what you want to grow in, and the inclusion of the strengths is a great way to identify how you can do that, because it leads you into the what am I going to do about the faults and weaknesses. The other activity you can do is simply just taking a journal and like considering like what you're thinking about that day, specifically like your reactions to other people and your initial thoughts of them.
Yeah.
Because first impressions are very important, and a lot of times, while it does fall onto the other person to present themselves in a positive manner, it does a lot fall onto you, in that you need to not bias your judgment towards them.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that's really helped me as I've been getting started on this journey, per se, is creating a schedule that I try and stick to every day. Because, like, what's the saying? There's something like habits become...
Oh, I don't know. I know that the Calvinist idle hands are the devil's workshop, but I don't know that one.
I don't know. Something about how...
But like habits become nuisances, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like your habits and your daily routines, that's a lot of who you are. And even though those things might seem kind of minute, if you do something every day, that really adds up over time.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you're wasting 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, if you're wasting that much time, that's time every day that you could be improving other aspects of your life, or not even for yourself. That's time you could be volunteering somewhere. That's time you could be doing a job.
Yeah.
Any of these things. So,
yeah, I wouldn't say that that scheduled time has to be like scheduled introspective time.
Yeah.
But it's the matter of doing something with your time to make value of your time, instead of just slothing around and being lazy and just being a boring person. If you're doing actions, you have a better likelihood of recognizing strengths, weaknesses, faults, flaws, all that stuff. Personally, a schedule has really helped me, especially this past summer with so little regimentation. It's allowed me to keep consistency and actually get longer projects done, which is really important, because so many people focus on just one. And like you said, introspection is a very long journey.
Lifelong.
I mean, I've started in quotes. I started doing a journey, so to speak, probably last fall, and it's still going strong, and I still feel there's a lot to develop. Again, a lifelong journey. And a schedule in itself, while helping you tackle those daily issues, will also help you tackle those long-term issues and make sure you're getting things done over like a month.
Yeah. My schedule, it's not like very strict, but a lot of what's helped me is really the more you regiment the morning of your day, like, because later in the day you have time for whatever you want to do, and that's essentially your reward for sticking to your schedule during the early parts of your day. For example, I try and wake up at 8 a.m. every day during this perpetual summer that we're in, for lack of a better term.
I think that is the best term.
I try and wake up at 8 every day, have breakfast, and then at 9 I sit down and I read a book for an hour straight, which it works wonders for your mind. Even if you don't like it, I highly recommend reading something, and reading something that you would be interested in.
Yeah, don't start with like the biomechanics of the human body. No, don't start with that. Like, start with fiction, because fiction is supposed to hold your attention. Older fiction can be a little tiresome in some cases, but it's still worth your time. I always recommend most stuff from like the 1980s and prior is a pretty good area because it's not too modern and not too old, so it's a nice, comprehensible and enjoyable read, and that gets you into like actually enjoying it, and then you can go tackle the biomechanics of the human body and actually both understand it and maybe in some cases enjoy it, like I do sickeningly when I read textbooks. It's an addiction. It is really bad, but it is about content, about what you're looking to get out of it. Again, introspection is a reflection on your own character. So if your own character is one that doesn't respect or enjoy reading books, okay, maybe that's a flaw. Maybe it's a fear that you don't understand those things. I'm no person to say, I'm no expert. However, that could be the case, and that's definitely my experience with it.
I think if you ask anyone who has read for their entire life and just look at how they conduct themselves, I think they tend to be not only more intelligent but wiser in a way. And especially in the like world of the hyper-technical world that we live in today, it's so hard to just sit down and do one thing without having something playing in your ear or doing something on a phone or computer. So
yeah, even when I read it is, and I've been trying to get better at that for the past year now, and even when I read still, if it's not super engaging, it can be challenging.
Yeah.
And I'll have to put the book down and come back to it.
Yeah. That's why audiobooks are so popular, which I guess is...
And podcasts.
That too. But I started listening to some audiobooks because I figured I'm a very slow reader, so it's a much faster way to get more information and more enjoyment, and not having to sit down and do only that.
Yeah.
I tried to look at it from a pragmatic point of view where I can get more things done while also listening.
I will say though, I don't think the word slow reader should, or a hyphenated word slow reader should be a negative word. I was one of those kids in elementary school who could read 47,000 words a second, but I didn't comprehend it at all. And especially recently when I've been reading those addicting textbooks, I would have to intentionally slow myself down. Otherwise, I wouldn't understand the content. Even in some fiction stuff, I would have to force myself. Jules Verne taught me that real quick. That man with his science-ness is so dense. So I don't think it should be frowned upon. Obviously, audiobooks are good because they give you the ability to listen and as like an oral story, and you can do other things and get more things done. But I don't think slow reading should be a knock on your character. Yeah. If anything, I think slow readers deserve more the right for trying.
Yeah. I'd say it's definitely more of a weakness in that. Oh yeah. It takes me longer to get through things, and that's something you can improve just by reading more.
Yeah, you just keep reading.
But it's hard at the beginning because it's such a drudge to get through.
Yeah.
So after the reading, at around 10 I go for a run, and this is something that I'd say also has fallen out of style, physical fitness. And even for the people that feel like they have a real grasp of who they are, and the more intellectual types, they tend to ignore this, I guess. Because, like, why do you need it? But for me, at least, it's a very meditative process, and like science would back me up on that. That it's not only good for your body physically in a lot of ways if you do it right, but it's very good for your mental stability. And one time, I don't know if this is scientifically backed or something, but when you like go through physical pain like that, it can sort of help you have a better grasp of mental or emotional pain you go through in your life.
That's interesting. Kind of like you're addressing that first so that your mind is freer to look at those things.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I definitely would agree that, especially like things like running or biking or even like baseball, just some way of exerting yourself and getting things out.
And it doesn't it doesn't have to be as like painful, I guess, as running or boring, frankly. But even doing stuff with other people, like going and throwing a frisbee or kicking a soccer ball, things like that, they can.
Yeah, I definitely feel that all of that stuff falls into the category of things you can do to just relax. Because so much of our world is I'm too busy, work, eat lunch, work, and so on all the time. Everyone knows the phrase, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. Tell me if you have other time. Everyone knows it. It's so frustrating, and it's both a product of the world we live in, and it's a matter of just people not taking the time to sit down and relax and really slow their lives down.
Yeah.
Again, tying back to reading books, that's exactly what I had to do because I wanted to just get through a textbook.
Yeah.
I wanted to have all the information, but if I wanted to actually have all the information within my head, I had to slow down and be patient with it.
I'd say, to go off on a tangent really quickly, I think a lot of the world right now is kind of just checking a box. Like, start this thing, get it done as fast as possible. And like, you can see that with the education system, which is a whole can of worms that
we'll cover that sometime.
We can get into another time. But so much of it is just make sure I pass the class, get on to the next year.
Yeah, it's check the box. And crossing stuff off a checklist is so satisfying. I often I'll do things, write it on the checklist, and then immediately cross it off just for the satisfaction of doing that. But I don't think everything should boil down to that. I mean, I have a whiteboard in my room that I use as kind of like a long-term checklist. I've had stuff on there since February. Probably, no, like November. Yeah. So a solid at least 8 or 9 months. I can't math, but don't worry. But checklists are good in that they allow you to organize your day again and kind of schedule and break things down. But they shouldn't be the entirety of your existence, because then you don't have those long-term goals, because you don't put marriage as a checklist.
Yeah.
I mean, some people do. I mean, if you want to go like an MRS degree or some of that stuff. But in reality, that, especially something like marriage, is a long-term developing commitment.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even say like the act of unity in the ceremony is the check of the box. I would say it's 20 years after that.
Yeah.
As you fulfill that relationship.
Yeah. I think another kind of tangent is we're so focused on checking the box that we forget that the journey is more of what's important, because even with marching band that we've had canceled, like the reason most of us are upset about that is not because we don't get to go to the final performance at the end of the year. The reason we're so upset is because we don't get that daily fulfillment of working towards something. You do have to have that end goal in mind, but you also have to make sure you value and enjoy the process too.
Yeah, while I loved the performances and loved getting to be so expressive with the music, oftentimes too expressive and almost falling off podiums and stuff, but I loved little more or few things more than just 8 a.m. mornings of competitions when everyone was just being complete idiots, but also having the best time rehearsing and enjoying ourselves, and just specifically seeing you sprint out onto the field with crazy hats and socks. Just everything about that made my day so much better. And that's something I would aspire to do, is to just enjoy it in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I could move on to the next part of my day. Sorry that we're focusing so much on, but I think
your day's neat.
I think it's somewhat relevant. The next part of my day, sort of around 11:30ish. I practice my instrument, which has been difficult recently since no there's no future goal like that's really tangible in mind. And a lot of times that can be hard. So I kind of want to ask you, not just for other people, but for myself, like, what's a way to sort of stay motivated even when there's no tangible goal to latch onto?
So, right as all of this closing down started and we were forced out of school, I took it upon myself to set a project, a number of projects, both in pieces and things I wanted to work on, and self-improvement too. But one of them was learning the Tableau de Provence by Paula Maurice, I think it is. And it was literally, I learned it over the course of, I think, 3 or 4 months. And it wasn't just a learning over time, it was this is the date I'm going to record it live. And I wanted to perform it live, but I ended up at least putting it online to view. And I planned that as a sort of climax and conclusion to all that. And I look back on it and I think about how I developed with time and how I grew and all the improvements I made. I may have gone a little faster than I would have liked. I would have liked a little bit more time on the piece, especially the fifth movement, because that thing is a ball. Just a mess, gosh. But it was about that working slowly over time and specifically setting that deadline. Mm-hmm. And the best way that I could break it up into segments was a practice journal, in the sense that I literally, on like an Excel spreadsheet, listed out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Excel, and so on, and then all of my fundamentals, acronyms, and what tempo I was going with them, and then broke them up every other day, so that I would, one, make sure I'm getting each one of them done, because I have like 14 of them now and I can't do them all every day. So I would do that to make sure each one was getting the right amount of attention, and the thing I was working at the time would get a little bit more because it needed it.
Yeah.
And then I would, after that, would have every other day would be the repertoire of the piece or some etude, back and forth, making sure both of those got time. Because initially, before I did that and had that kind of schedule, I really did it because my lesson is on Wednesday. So Thursday I would probably practice. Friday I'd probably practice. Saturday I'd probably not, because I didn't want to. I didn't think I needed to. Next Wednesday was really far away. I had plenty of time in the middle of the week. Sunday comes, getting a little worried, probably practice a little bit. Monday, Tuesday, learn the actual stuff.
Yeah. And
even still, I probably wouldn't learn as much as I normally would, because then I was, one, panicking to those 2 days and not organizing it in a way that everything got the right amount of attention. So my recommendation, in a very long-winded way, is to break up your practice and think about, like, what needs priority and how can I make everything else get even the same amount of practice time.
Yeah. And I think this can apply to really any skill or goal you're trying to accomplish more generally. It only goes so far as to schedule what you're going to do, and you have to be very deliberate with it. Like, for practicing an instrument, for example, if you're on your phone between everything you play, mm-hmm. you're probably not getting as much out of it as the time you're putting in. And that can really help with a lot of things, to be more efficient when you're doing it, because even when going back to the running thing and the reading thing, those do take up more time. Those do take up time in your day, but I think when you have things like that, they make the work you have to do a lot more efficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you, obviously, again, it's I'm too busy to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think if it's not built into your schedule, you won't do it at all. Mm-hmm. My best experience with that is I've been preparing parts for a piece for, I think, 6 months now, because I didn't have a deadline and I didn't put time in my schedule to do it, simply. And it's really important to break that down and actually know what you need to get done, because if you don't, you'll lose that into the mess of just, I don't have time for it. Even if you are now more busy, and it'll feel better for you. It'll feel more regimented and just almost relaxed in some ways, knowing that this is when I do it this time. And then when 3 weeks pass, you'll be like, I've been doing it for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You feel fine. You don't need to panic like, oh God, I have to make 47 parts in 2 days, which I have done because I didn't didn't set it up that way.
Okay, so after I practice, I eat lunch.
Good choice.
Do we have anything to say about that? Can that be elaborated on?
Vary your lunch palate. I had hot dogs every day for a solid 4 weeks in May. It was really, I mean, I love hot dogs, but it was bad.
I actually do have something to say about this. I think it's a good opportunity to learn a skill. I think especially today when maybe people are used to just throwing something in the microwave for lunch, and then your parents get home from work and then they make dinner or they order takeout or something like that. I think it's a good opportunity now, since we do have most of the day, to learn to cook.
Yeah.
And me and my brother have kind of taken it upon ourselves to make dinner one or two times a week for our family, so that when they get home, they don't have to do that.
That is excellent, both in teaching yourself a skill and being kind to others. That's a perfect thing to do. My brother, he just finished his undergraduate degree, and he's in that college period where he's actually has to learn how to cook now. And of course, he's going wild with concoctions and things that do not look appetizing, but he shoves them down. I don't understand it. But in a way, it kind of guiltily forced me to look at my own food and be like, wow, this is pitiful. So, yeah, because it was really bad. So lately especially, I've been forcing myself to broaden that palate. While I do like a lot of things, I don't make a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I want to have that ability so that I can pick and choose when there's not recipes or foods. And
it'll force you, if you do it consistently, to look at what you're eating. Because a lot of people, myself included, don't do that a whole lot.
47 hot dogs. I realized that after 46.
So, and then after that, I think I have another practice session at some point after that. And then I have what I labeled as domestic duties.
That is awesome.
Which is really just chores or things our parents have told us to do that day. But I think it can be good if you do things that aren't on that list, even if, like, because most people have things that they're responsible for around the house, but I think there's more potential there for a lot of people. Like myself, sometimes when I don't have a lot going on, I'll clean my car, which is, it's fun, honestly, to do that, but it's still very productive, and it's something that I can tangibly be proud of, because I'm in my car so much and I drive so many people around that it's something I can really be proud of.
Yeah, and that definitely falls into the area of cleaning your room, cleaning your workspace. And while sometimes it's okay, it makes more sense for some people to have a messy workspace and work that way compared to an organized one. I'm kind of in the middle. I definitely think from both sides it should be like every month or so you want to look at what you have, the whole area in itself, and think about what needs to be cleaned. And if it's a larger area, break it apart.
Yeah.
Especially because if you set the goal, I want to clean the entire house today, you will fail.
Yeah.
There's no question about that at all. So a good way of starting that is like I want to vacuum my room today. Or like I want to clean off the bookshelf or dust today. Small things, but again, over time you can work those into your schedule so that they're easy things each day you can knock out and feel good about and then cross off the list again.
Like even if you look at this room, it's obviously not that, it's not spotless, but it was much worse last week. Like I had sheet music everywhere and instruments were just on the ground. And if you look over there, there's like a row of like 15 saxophone reeds, mostly from my brother, that were just everywhere. Some of them were out of their cases.
Oh, that's foul. Yeah, I have on my bookshelf, one of the levels of it is my music shelf. So I have all of my textbooks, of course, that I have drowned in reading, but they're oddly fun. Anyways, next to that, because it's not the full shelf, I also have a spot where I keep like my reads, my extra neck straps and stuff. And for a while, it was the most frustrating thing because I would try and organize it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But because the books were there and there wasn't a book stopper, it would just fall over, be a mess all the time. It was so bad. So I ended up recently just literally getting a bucket and organizing things within that bucket. And now that also acts as a book stopper and makes that whole shelf seem much more pragmatic and workable and comfortable to look at. Because I've had times before I've had books fall off the shelf and hit my instrument in a major panic. Yeah, but that shelf specifically, it's really important to have the conciseness of it, because that's the shelf that I go to and grab books and run back away. I just pull things out. The other day I had like 4 books on my desk from it all at the same time. So again, that falls into that category of making sure you keep your space clear in what you're doing, even if it's messier than some people would like, as long as you know what's going on and it's clean, and by your definition, it's good.
Yeah.
Because it's about functionality a lot of times. I would not have a desk with papers just stacked up on top of it, but I don't think I would have a desk where everything has color-coded spots. I'm definitely not that kind of person.
Do you wear socks for each day of the week?
I do not. No.
So I think this is a good point, a good place to kind of diverge and sort of that cleaning your own room mentality. Whereas a lot of people today whenever they they tend to see things wrong outside of themselves and in the world and even in the people around them, and not a lot in their own home or their own being, their own values, their own actions, things like that. So I think I don't really know where I'm going with this.
Well, I would say, tying back to the whole theme of today, I don't think it's right for you to judge people outside of your own home until you are both comfortable and know, not believe, but know you're a better person. Because, to put it quite bluntly, why would you have the right to judge them if you're no better? And like you said, it's...
He who is without sin casts the first stone.
Exactly, yeah. You want to have that. You want to be very clear in what you are. You want to have your values. I have my 6 or 7 principles, trademark, patent pending, that I abide to, and I use those to control myself and plan how I do things. And then I also use those, now that I'm growing as a person, I use those to how I treat others. One of them, I think it's number 2 or 3, is... complete understanding before judgment, and that's specifically in relation to looking at other people. For example, this past May, when we were selecting the new drum majors for our team, I was the returning drum major, and I was the only one, so it was myself and then these 3 new ones. And anytime anyone asked me about who I thought it should be, I would say I will not reply. Because I did not feel I had the right.
Yeah.
I did not feel like I knew them well enough and had seen them perform and teach and act to make a judgment on what I think they should be. And especially as a role such as a drum major, in that leadership capacity and that having to also have that technical ability of the hands, it's definitely something I would wanted to have had more time to consider. I definitely had people I thought it would be, and I had people I thought it wouldn't be, but that's because I had seen them.
Yeah.
And I understood them more. And it's a shame now that we've lost parts of our season that I won't get to interact with them as much, but I would have really liked to see how they each developed as people and where they would start and where they would end. I hadn't seen I have not seen any of them conduct in person, and I have not seen any of them lead in person.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like I have any position to talk on that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I've really been struggling. Initially, it was a very poignant thorn in my head of like, no, don't think that. Stop. I literally would like slap my hand when I would think that kind of thing about someone, because I was like, I don't have the right. It's not fair to them.
Yeah.
They deserve fair judgment. And so that's a really difficult thing to develop, and I'm, of course, still developing it with time. But again, it's about patience and complete understanding before judgment, that you don't consider someone based on a stereotype or consider someone based on their beliefs, because, again, their beliefs aren't necessarily part of their character entirely.
To me, it's almost like a hierarchy of your responsibility for taking care of people. Like, first you need to make sure you're in order. All of your stuff is, like, not perfect, but you have a pretty good idea of who you are, who you're looking to become, and things like that. And then once you've done that, once you've reached your self-actualization, to quote the hierarchy of human needs.
Yeah.
Once you've reached that, you can begin sort of expanding into other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the first thing would be like your closest friends or your immediate family, things like that. Mm-hmm. And you can work on helping them reach that. And not in a judgmental way, in a constructive critical way, mm-hmm. that will actually help them.
Yeah, it's very important to recognize, while you may be helping them in that path, you're no authority on it.
Yeah.
So don't think of yourself as this high and mighty being, that you are a complete self-actualized introspective person. No, you're not. Don't lie to yourself. Just, let's be honest. It's a developing process. Everyone's in it together. And when you are going through that process of developing yourself and understanding yourself, oftentimes you have to look to others to help identify mm-hmm. things. For example, I've asked you before to talk, tell me if I'm making faults or if I'm invalidating values that I have. You rely on those other people a lot of times.
Yeah, we've certainly.
Mm-hmm. And it's really important that if you do become, quote, self-actualized, return the favor.
Yeah.
You give it back in the same way that I started the process a little sooner than you, so I've been able to give things to you.
Yeah.
But you've given just as many things back to me. It's been a great process, and mm-hmm. it really makes me enjoy your company much more than anyone else. Sorry, our editor here. But nonetheless, as always, prepare yourself before you can lead others. As a conductor of a musical ensemble, I've always been told, like, sometimes musicians can get away with learning their parts in the class. A conductor can't practice with the ensemble.
Yeah.
The conductor has to be ready. They have to know everything about the piece. They have to be ready to teach. They have to be wise about the instruments and the way that they would act. They have to be upfront and ready to go. And that's them preparing themselves first, in a very literal, pragmatic sense, not to mention the mental self-actualization elements of it, where they have to be knowing what their nuances are and how they might consider someone upon immediate reaction, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a really good metaphor with the conductor and the ensemble, because it's partly about you, this process, but it's just as much for other people and those you will help by becoming a better person, and those you can help start them on this journey themselves. Mm-hmm. Like self-improvement and introspection, these aren't purely selfish things. I mean, there's selfish aspects to them. Like, if you go through this process, I firmly believe you will find your life more fulfilling.
Absolutely.
And that is, I guess you could say, a selfish prospect, but it's just as much helping other people. Other people will benefit from a more, I guess, happier you, more fulfilled, mm-hmm. and you can sort of use that knowledge that you've gained about yourself to help them on their own their own lives.
Yeah, for the audience, we both had two teachers this year, Mr. Williams and Mr. Kozer, and they are two people that I consider very complex individuals, and they are two people that I consider to be the most self-actualized people I've probably ever met. And that shone off of them, both in the way they carried themselves and the way they enjoyed their own lives, but in the way that they demonstrated that to us, and it rubbed off on us. And the lectures that they passed off and the stories that they told, they taught us these things. Those two especially taught me personally so many things about the process and really got me started. Especially Mr. Williams, and then Mr. Kozer low down the line with some of his lectures that he would give, just his life and love language stuff. Still best lectures I've ever heard. But again, it's the other people that help you get to where you need to be.
Yeah.
Very few tasks can be done solely by yourself.
Yeah. And I think the key with them was that they weren't even done. Like, as far along in their journey as they were, especially Mr. Williams, like, he was still, as you say, very complex.
Yeah.
He still had days where you couldn't quite pinpoint where his mind was or what he was going through that day, but no matter what it was, you could still learn something from it. And you could tell he still, as much as he said he hated the AP students or hated the school or all these things,
he still cared.
Yeah, it was still invaluable to us as students.
Yeah, so often students think of just their teachers as they're there for the money, they're doing their job, but we forget, and a lot of people I think realized it this past year when we left school and teachers couldn't see us every day, that the action of just coming into contact with their students is the best part of their day.
Yeah.
Especially if they can't even see them. The voices are okay, but if it's literally just seeing across the room is the best part of their day. Again, tying back to those morning rehearsals when I'd see you flaring across the field. Yeah. That was the best part of my day, because it was like, he's such an idiot, but I love him so much. He's just ridiculous. Same thing with so many of my section members and my fellow drum majors, and even my directors to some extent. But it was that we cared about their presence and that we respected them for who they were. And once you appreciate them as people, they'll see that. They'll know. And more often than not, in this world of negativity, we forget that people need to be told that. They need to be told that we enjoy their company, that we're thankful for them. We might think it, but very few people say it, and which I think is really unfortunate.
So I wanted to ask you what you want to kind of do now, because I think we've sort of come to a stopping point. We could either take a brief intermission and regroup and let them listen to some Bach.
Bach. Johann Sebastian Bach.
Or we could sign off here and quit while we're ahead, I guess. It just depends on how much more you think we can say.
Well, I would definitely say there's always more for introspection, and we definitely have plenty of discussion topics. We might want to, I think we should stop today.
Okay.
It's just simply so that we can come back and finish things out with more lightened heads.
There weren't any questions from the chat, were there?
No, there were not.
Okay.
Actually, from Beneroni, don't you mean glizzies? Don't really know what that means, but...
I've never heard that word before in my life.
How is it spelled?
I think it's a YouTuber or something, I don't know.
Oh, no.
No idea.
We're not that popular.
Yeah.
If anyone has any questions for us, or just comments, anything.
We're no experts, but we might be able to help you.
Also, I just put up a concept logo that Andrew put together.
In MS Paint.
It should be up on the stream in a second.
I'm a professional designer.
Professional Microsoft Paint user.
Nice. There it is. It's a knockoff TED Talk, but it's not TED, it's 2. Well, I think that's all for today.
Yep.
Thank you for hanging out with me. I always enjoy your company, as demonstrated in this chat.
Yeah.
There's definitely more stuff that we can say, but we'll
Yep.
bring that back and do some follow-up next time, I think.
Yep. For everyone here, Luke,
Andrew?
this has been the 2 Existential